So to render our particles, we need to add a very important attribute, and it's called the p-scale attribute. So we can do that with a point wrangler. So I will lay down a new point wrangler, connect it here, name it set p-scale, change its color, and let's type the following. F, because it's a floating point attribute, at p-scale is equal to 0.01 and semicolon. So you can press Ctrl Enter to evaluate the code. So for now we are hard coding the value of 1 centimeter for each sphere or each point. So let's go with this for now. I will add a null, call it out or out fire, change its color to black, and let's try rendering this to see what we get. So let's go to the out context. I will create a mantra node, call this pop fire, and we need to create a camera. So you can go to the perspective and click here on new camera. The camera will be created from the point of view that we're in. So that's fine for now. Let's go back to the out context. And under the rendering tab, let's change the rendering engine to physically based rendering. And let's see what we get. So click here on the render view and click on the render button. So remember we used 0.01 as a p-scale value. So this is 1 centimeter, which is huge for the flames, but it's a nice starting point and it's good to see that it's working and we're currently rendering the geometry. So for now, let's go back to the object context, dive into the fire node, and I will change the p-scale to 0.01. Control Enter to evaluate. And this will start looking much better. So in terms of the material, the flame will usually have a self-illumination material. And there's a very nice preset for that. If you go into the material palette and find the utility category, here you will find a glow material. So you can click and drag to your material palette. Now I will go back to the material context, and here we can change the attributes of the material. So first of all, make sure that we're using point alpha and point color from the geometry, which by default is on, so that's fine. I will just change the name of the material to fire material. Let's assign the material to the object. So here under the render tab, click on this button to the right, and under the material context, double click on fire material. So this should be much better now. Let's go back to the render view and click on render. So at this point, we can start tweaking the opacity of the particles, the intensity of the glow, and a few other things, for example, the particle count and the particle scale. So let's work first of all with the opacity or the alpha value. Here where we set the color and alpha, remember we have a ramp. I'll decrease the color of the core particles. So I think we can go even lower from here. Let's try with 0.001. just to achieve a more transparent look. And another thing we can do is decrease a little bit more the p-scale value. So instead of changing this numeric value, we could also add a channel. So I could type CH, then open parentheses, open quotes, and type the name of your channel. This name can be whatever you want. For example, p-scale, close quotes, and close parentheses. So to create the actual channel, click here on this button to the right. And now we can type our value here. Let's try with 0.0004. So right now the particles are very tiny. But that's fine because we want to achieve a very transparent look. And finally, we could increase the particle count of our simulation. So let's go with 5 million. We would need to resim. So go back to frame 1. So let's go back to the render view and render a single frame. So this is looking quite fine. The last thing I want to do before we move on to our next exercise is to add some motion blur. So first of all, go back to the geometry node. Here under render sampling, change the geometry velocity blur to velocity blur. By default, it's off. And back on the out context under your mantra node, make sure to check allow motion blur under the rendering tab. You could also increase the pixel samples for your final render, just to avoid the grainy look.